Hi everyone, this is John Garrett from hypertransitory.com, and this is the next part of my tutorial on character creation and the scene setup for True Tales of the Saurian Order. And last time we talked about posing the character and how to get our main render out. This time we're going to talk about doing the shadowing, and we're going to make 3 or 4 renders with different shadowing options, and I'm going to show you how we do that to kind of flesh out this scene here. So this is where we left off last time. We got our pose, we had our character in pose, we could do a render, and all this around here is going to be transparent in the background. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to change a little bit of the materials, because now we need some shadows. And as I had mentioned before, a lot of times when you need shadows, you're going to go to your light and you're going to go down to the shadow and you're going to set your shadow type. Now these are going to drastically increase your render time, so I don't want to deal with that. And in this particular style that I'm doing, I don't really need to deal with all that, so we're going to leave that alone. But what we are going to do is we're going to change this so that we get this flat character in a black and white setup, so that we can overlay those in Photoshop. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to our surfaces, and what we need to do is change every surface so that it no longer uses the ambient, which, as you remember, is what this character is set up for now. Every texture and color is set in the ambient channel. Well, now we're going to undo that, and we're only going to use specular. We're still not going to use diffuse. We're going to go for specular. It's going to be up to 100%, and that's going to be how we get our shadows. So luckily, the thing about that is I can then go to the surfaces and I can change everything at the same time. So I can click on this one, and then I can shift click down here to the bottom, and I can get everything all at once. And depending on how much stuff you've got in your scene, if you've got a ton of crap, you may not be able to do it, but you may have to take it a couple pieces at a time. But with this one, I can pretty much do it. Now you got to be careful going through the list here, because they're not all set up the same. You might have a couple of diffuse areas and a couple of specular areas that you need to change, so you can't just change one. You got to make sure you get all of them. And I'm going to start up here at the top, obviously, and I'm going to take my textures that are in here, and I'm going to get rid of all of them. So we can see some things are changing here. Diffuse is off, the strength is at 0, and yet not everything changed. That's because down here there's even more diffuse stuff. So I have to get rid of that texture that's in those channels. So now that's all gone, and this is all I've got left is my ambient. I'm just going to go in here and change that color to white. It probably doesn't matter, but and here I've got a strength. Something has a strength because it says multiple, so I'm going to change that to 0. Alright, so we should be pretty safe there. But next what we got to do is we got to get rid of the ambient. So here's our specular here, but let's go get rid of our ambient, and I want that off. And then I'm going to take care of all the textures that are loaded in there, get rid of those. I'm going to take the strength down to 0. Get rid of any textures that are in there. Get the strength down to 0. Okay, so we got that. So it looks like, okay, did we really screw up here? Not yet. We have to go to our specular. We have to get that active. And we need our specular strength to be at 100%. And as usual, as with the diffuse, we got a couple of areas where we need to do that. So let's go down further here. Click that on to strength. We get that to 100%. And it's the thing when you've got multiple types of specular that are done by multiple people, and sometimes the sliders all don't match up. You might have a couple of them, but as you can see, this is what we're looking for here. We want this just black and white, and that's it. So as you can see, I have my glossiness is turned off. Now if I was to kick this up to 50% or so. Look at how instead of my hard edges, I've got, you know, this whole glossy, soft edges. And you can really play around with that. It, you know, it can really lend some pizzazz and you know, some style to your pieces. I normally set that at 0 because I don't like to mess around with it too much. Now, what I do need to do now is we're going to mess around with this distant light. And as I mentioned before, it doesn't matter where you put this. Only thing that does matter is the angle of the light. So we're going to change that. And if we look at our parameters, we'll be able to see that we don't have any rotation on it now. So, I mean, I can drag it around here and you can just try to get something decent. You know, you can see how the light is changing now. And that's really how I get my shadows out of this thing. And, you know, one thing I should mention too, back in my surfaces, if you have taken an object or a surface and you've tried to hide it by taking its opacity to 0, if you bump up the specularity, looks like everything here has 100% opacity though, but sometimes if it says multiple, there might be objects that are, you know, 50%, 0%. If you put a specularity on that 0 opacity object, it will still reflect some light and it'll show up. And, you know, depending on what it is and where it is, it may or may not screw up the scene. But I've had it a couple times where I've had ghost objects showing up and I'm going, where is that coming from? Well, it's coming from a 0 opacity object that has 100% specularity. So you're going to have to track those down and take their specularity down to 0 too, so they don't reflect any light. Now, as you can see, I've got a couple of shadows here, and you know, this might be something I like. So what I'll do is I'll just take a render of this, and what I'll do is I'll go through, I might do 4 or 5 of these and just move that thing around to whatever I think looks good. And then I'll take a render. And then I'll go back and spin it around again and get some different shadows. And after I'm done, I'll do another render and I'll just keep those. So when I bring them into Photoshop, I'll just drop them right on top of my main image. And I will combine them using the render modes, or the layer, you know, combination modes. So right now, I mean, all this around here would be transparent, this black area. But you know, if you don't like that, you can take the light, spin it around, and you know, see what else you can get to try to bring out the shapes more. And you can always combine them and take some parts out and you know, leave some parts in until you get what you want. And that's what's really great about this, is they really render fast, even in big pieces. You know, there's not a lot of light refraction and you know, dealing with the normal shadowing process going on, so they render pretty darn quick. And then you can get those things done and get them into Photoshop and start combining them and start really making a dynamic looking image. And that's what we're going to do next. I think that I've pretty much shown you how to get the decent shadows and get what you want out of it. So if you have any questions, then let me know, and I can answer those either here or on my site. And what we're going to do next is we're going to move on to Photoshop, and I'm going to show how I combine it and how I make the final image using the layers and the different blending modes and such in there. So stay tuned for that, and thanks for watching.